like to rename intermittent fasting to deliberate starvation, because that's what it
Yes,
is.
see, I saw you talking about this because...
And if you want to deliberately starve yourself for periods of the day, that's up to you, but call it what it is, right? It's not anything fancy. You already fast every day because you sleep.
That's what I said. I was
to
like,
fast twice. It's pointless.
Yes.
Your body does all of its normal regeneration stuff and all that stuff when you sleep, and that's normal, and that's great. That's why we sleep. That's why if you don't sleep, you die eventually, right? You don't need to do it again during the day. And also, let's be honest, nobody's actually doing it. Didn't start because people were like, oh, there seem to be really good health benefits. It was all, oh, we'll eat less food and be thin.
Yes.
And that's honestly and still genuinely, and I will fight anyone that says otherwise, that's still the biggest driver nowadays too.
Oh.
And it is simply just, I can eat what I like later because I've had a half a day of not eating anything.
Yeah.
So it's just starvation for half a day.
Yeah.
But you're calling it something else to make it sound wellness.
Yeah, because intermittent fasting sounds posh, it sounds bougie, it sounds like you're doing something really positive with your life.
You also are required to be relatively middle class to do it, because otherwise, you wouldn't choose to deliberately not eat if you were struggling to get and pay for food, would you?
No, which is what I tell Cooper all the time whenever he's being a fussy little eater. I'm like, sweetheart, you're lucky you even get to eat food, which is, oh my God, look, I've just given another little answer to the next question I want to ask you. So now, obviously, your little one, she's not at the stage of eating big, normal, like...
Oh, she's eating anything.
Is she eating anything?
Yeah.
Is she?
Yeah.
Do you know what? This is terrible, because when your child, like Cooper, is now nearly 7...
Well, it's all different, isn't it? It's all different. But some kids are you're lucky with some things, and some things you're not. Right?
Yeah.
And
I just forget what age he did his things. Like, people are like, so what age? The only thing I know is when I stopped breastfeeding.
Yeah.
I think
remember that time.
Yeah, I remember that time very well. I was like, freedom. I was like, oh my God, I can go places and not be needed.
No, she's at the point where she'll eat half a bagel and 2 eggs in the morning for breakfast. It's just mad.
And what's her eating like? Is she fussy? Is she good? You got to tell me she's good as
sorry.
I can't call.
She can't. She's terrible at napping during the day, if that helps.
Okay.
That's her annoying quality. No, we've gone through stages from food, but I've always been. You would expect me to have an opinion on this stuff, obviously, but I've always been of the opinion that we just give her anything and everything, and we just keep offering. And if she doesn't like it, she doesn't like it, and that's fine.
Okay.
And we don't worry about, is she getting enough greens, or is she getting this or that? It's like their body's fine. It will get enough stuff. She will find out what she likes. She will explore. So she likes things that are weird, like olives. I mean, I say weird. It's less weird for an adult, but it's like, for a kid to like olives, that's a bit odd, but she'll munch on an olive. She likes most foods, and she's a big eater, and nursery is like she's having seconds. I was like, great. Give it to her. Good. That's all right.
And what do you think about
Can't
that?
use a spoon, though, can't use a spoon.
She can't use a spoon. They hate
She got to nursery, and every other kid was there with a spoon, like doing their breakfast. I was like, fuck, we haven't taught her to use a spoon yet. Shit, how do we... I was like, she's not good at using a spoon. They're like, it's okay, we'll feed her. Okay, good.
If it makes you feel any better, Cooper's 6, nearly 7, and I still have to tell him on a daily basis to use his fork. He just uses his fingers. He's like a little feral child.
That's just our culture being prudish, isn't it? It's like,
really,
you have to use your knife and fork.
Yeah, like, to be fair, that does look easier what you're doing, mate. A bit messier, but it does look easier.
Exactly. Just more cleaning the floor.
I know. I mean, yeah, that carries on for a long time. They never seem to hit their mouths.
That's why you should get a dog.
We used to. I mean, he's at the stage now where he's asking, and I was like, I just don't know if I can do a dog as well as a child. I stopped at 1 child, so I don't know. I think I want to add a dog into the mix, to be honest with you.
We'll talk later about that.
We'll talk later. But in terms of children and their eating habits, and so Cooper, you can't fill him. He's like a bottomless pit at the moment. And there's so much around kind of like the healthy eating, the intermittent fasting, all these things.
We control our own food. Why wouldn't we also want to control our children's food, right?
So I'm
not saying that's a good thing, but it makes sense that there's lots of encouragement to do that.
Exactly. But I've gone down a path of he will eat so much. I'm like, he can't possibly still be hungry. So I go, no, that's enough now, darling. You don't need any more. You've had loads. And I think I watched something on your Instagram. I can't think what it was exactly you were talking about. And it made me go, I maybe shouldn't be saying that to him, because is that me teaching him? Is that me teaching him bad food habits? Is that me teaching him that maybe like disordered eating.
Well, it gets complicated, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And there's long conversations around like what kind of food is it, and is it food that actually is meeting his satiety, right? If you mentioned him potentially being a bit picky with certain things,
Very.
right? And so like if he's quite good at eating foods that actually are not that big from a satiety perspective, so they don't fill him up that much, then maybe that's one of the reasons why he feels like he's always hungry, right? Because he may be. So he's had an appropriate amount of energy for his body, but he's still hungry because it's not hitting that satiety need.
Yeah.
Right. And we can kind of recognize that with kind of certain foods, right? That if we're trying to meet our hunger with, let's say, a share bag of crisps, then it's not going to meet that hunger well, but we are perfectly happy to eat the whole thing, right? And so again, that's not to say that that's wrong. It's more just what are we trying to do? What do we think that food is going to serve? So in general, if we're hungry, we should eat. That's a good principle.
Yeah.
And if our kid's hungry and they want to eat, like, again, in general, that's a good thing. It's
You're
just
right.
working out, like, is there some stuff? Is there a bit of an overlying theme here of like, he's very good at eating the foods that aren't hitting his satiety, and how can we get some other foods in there that
Something a
are
bit more.
satiating, right? And then we can kind of see where his hunger's at. So it's not a bad idea to have a break sometimes, because that satiety can come later.
Yeah, because your mind has to catch up with your tummy, doesn't it?
Well, again, with certain foods.
Yeah.
So certain foods are pretty quick at that, and the satiating foods.
What's quicker?
Like steak.
Oh, is that...
Right? If you think
Yeah.
about-
Oh my gosh,
yeah?
that's so true, because
Exactly.
I'll be like
You just
halfway
full
through a
very
steak.
quick.
Yeah.
It's not like it's going to make you full in an hour. You're full. It's why I like a Sunday roast and stuff, like big portions of meat. Not that that's what we should do every single meal, but they are just very satiating. And so it's very difficult to continue. That's why all of the eating challenges that restaurants make money from offering are all meat, because they're hard, right? It's very easy to eat 5 tubes of Pringles if you needed to for an eating challenge, right? But 5 steaks, never going to happen. Yeah, and so there are certain steaks, just an easy, obvious one that you can think about, but there are certain foods that are more satiating than others, and so certain food, if he's more keen to eat the foods that aren't quite as satiating at the moment, which is also fine. Kids go through picky phases, that's fine, don't panic. But if he is, then maybe it's a case of like, well, in half an hour's time, his body might have recognized that it is more filling and he's got that energy, and then as his body is getting that energy, it's going, oh, I'm not as hungry anymore.
Yeah.
So maybe there's things with him where actually taking a break and then re-offering, where you're not just going, you're not allowed any more food, but it's like, well, let's just take a bit of a break.
Let's just have like half an hour.
And let's see if you're still hungry, and if you are, great, cool, have some more. But it's a balance, right?
Yeah,
and it's a balance between just going, well, that seems like that's too much, so you should stop. And we don't know what his body's feeling, right?
No, and he's a grown lad.
And we don't want to project our stuff.
Exactly, and that's